Welcome back to the Ross Bolen podcast. I am Ross Bolen, here with co-host and my pirate lover, Jared Borislow. In all seriousness, it has been a big day for J-Bone.
J-Bone!
Jared, tell us what's going on.
Yes, so today is the first full day that my new podcast that is just J-Bone, called the Formula Bone F1 Show, is live and ready for your ear holes and nose holes and eye holes and every other hole you have.
All of your holes.
All the holes. The Formula Bone F1 Show is the number one, soon-to-be, Formula One podcast in the world.
Certainly the number one Formula One podcast on the Bolen Media Network.
Yeah, having it be Formula Bone, Formula One is a little confusing, but I'm going to get better at it. So
It's a tongue twister.
It is. This podcast is made for any fan of Formula One, whether you've been a lifelong fan or whether you just found it through Drive to Survive. Maybe you just watched Drive to Survive and haven't even actually watched the sport yet. Doesn't matter. If you like Formula One, this is the podcast for you. There's a lot of Formula One brands out there that are like really hoity-toity and gatekeep and are like, oh, we don't like those Drive to Survive American fans.
The elitist F1 fans.
Yeah, screw them. They stink.
They do stink.
I'm the opposite of that. I'm for everybody. If you like Formula One, celebrate it with me on the Formula Bone F1 Show, baby.
Come on, come all F1 fans.
We're all coming at the Formula Bone F1 Show.
Exactly.
So yeah, it's available anywhere you get your podcast, including YouTube. I have a lot of YouTube subscribers, but you could be listening right now, another one of them.
YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify.
Stitcher.
Follow, subscribe, rate, review everywhere. Formula Bone.
Yes.
Yeah.
So what's awesome right now, I just launched a podcast. If you could take 30 seconds, if you're listening right now, you means you support J-Bone because you listen to the Ross Bolen podcast. If you could take 30 seconds to go to Apple Podcasts, rate the show 5 stars, give it a funny, helpful review that would tell other people how great the show is. That'll help me shoot up the charts, helps get a lot of new eyeballs on the podcast, helps me get new listeners organically. It's hard to get new listeners organically, but you guys can help me do that. Just go rate and review an Apple Podcast. I would really, really appreciate it.
Do that for our show as well, for the
yeah.
Ross Bolen podcast. We've had a contest on Patreon this month where our listeners shared their reviews that they've written for us on Apple Podcasts, and we're going to pick the best one in the next couple days, and that person wins a prize of some kind. I don't remember what it is. Doesn't matter.
Do you feel like I explained
do the same as well on the Ross Bolen podcast. Rate and review, 5 stars, and take a couple seconds to write a couple sentences, and we'd appreciate that.
Do you think I explained it well enough, or should I give them a little slap and tickle, the listeners?
Play the trailer. Give them the trailer.
I'll give them the trailer. Here's a trailer. It's lights out and away I go with the Formula Bone F1 Show. If you're tired of Formula One content creators making you feel bad for being new to the sport and or getting into it thanks to Netflix's Drive to Survive, this is the podcast for you because there's absolutely no gatekeeping here. If you like Formula One, I like you. Who am I? I'm Jared J-Bone Borislow, your average American who used his time stuck indoors during the COVID era to watch Drive to Survive, get obsessed with Formula One, and then launch a comedic and informative F1 TikTok account that randomly blew up. I know that makes me sound like I'm like 13 years old, but don't worry, I'm at least twice that age, so I'm mature enough to stand behind my F1 takes, whether they're absolutely god tier or stink like Haas. On the Formula Bone F1 Show, I'll be covering topics such as race previews and recaps, the latest Formula One news, breakdowns of confusing F1 rules and regulations, biographies of F1 legends whose names you hear Crofty say all the time but whom you know little about, and much more, with the goal being to make you laugh while you learn. Welcome to the Formula Bone F1 Show, available wherever you get your podcasts, with video podcasts available on YouTube. J-Bone! So that is the Formula Bone F1 Show. Go check it out anywhere you get your podcasts, including YouTube. And you can also follow Formula Bone at Formula Bone everywhere. That is Formula Bone.
That's some NPR level shit right there, folks.
Yeah, that was, I was surprised at myself when I made that promo.
Bolen Media to the goddamn moon. Fuck their wives, drink their blood, Bolen Media. We are exactly like NPR, come to think of it. Again, I would also like to remind my Houston followers to also follow Banging the Can everywhere, at Banging the Can. Thank you. I will spare the rest of you any Houston sports takes today. Today's episode of RBP is brought to you by Harry's. If you've looked in the mirror recently and really looked and seen that beard that's gotten weird and out of control over the last year and a half, and it's time to go back to the office and clean up and you need help, Harry's is here for you. If you're getting back to the office like so many of us are, so like Jared and I clearly never really left, but a lot of my friends over the past couple months especially, told me this is my first day back in the office, and I'm like, oh, God. Well, I saw you recently, and you still look like hell because you haven't gone to harrys.com/RBP. Your morning routine, shower, shave, and, well, Harry's can help with 2 of those 3 things, make them easier and better. If you don't know Harry's, it's time you do. They were created to be different from other shaving companies, crafting high-quality, long-lasting blades and durable weighted handles that make a close, comfortable shave quick and, dare we say, enjoyable. And because Harry's insists that you shouldn't have to choose between a great shave and a fair price, they just give you both. So refill blades start as low as $2. Their new customers get their starter set, which includes a 5-blade razor, weighted handle, foaming shaving gel with aloe, and a travel cover. $13 value for just $3. Plus, Harry's offers a whole range of amazing face and body care products for men, all delivered right to your door. I'm a 34-year-old man, been using shaving products since I hit puberty at 24, and I can assure you, Harry's makes the most high-quality shaving experience I've encountered in my decade-plus of facial hair maintenance as a very hairy and manly man who has 0 patches in his facial hair. There's never been a better time, Jared, to try Harry's. Go to harrys.com/RBP to get their starter set for just $3. It's 100% satisfaction guarantee, so you've got nothing to lose. harrys.com/RBP right now to get this special offer. That's harrys.com/RBP.
I heard you say you hit puberty at 24.
Did you?
Yeah. What's worse, hitting puberty at like 10 or hitting puberty at 24?
I couldn't tell you. I've only hit it at 24. Jared, I watched Chappelle's new Netflix special.
Yes.
The Closer. And let me start by saying, he makes a joke in the special that many consider him the GOAT. And I would still consider myself to be one of those people. This man is an idol to me, one of my heroes, like he is to many entertainers and comedians and all manner of people. That being said, I also believe I have cracked the code on what he is doing and why, and in my opinion, and I don't like it. And I'm going to explain why. So I'll say up front, to not bury the lead. What upsets me about Dave Chappelle in 2021 is he could make a real difference by pointing to the hypocrisy of something that matters, like our political system, or further exposing racial injustice, or roasting Tucker Carlson out of his career, but he'd rather squabble with the trans community? This is what, 4 Netflix specials? Is that correct?
3 or 4.
3 or 4, largely based around his inability to wrap his head around the more progressive PC culture of 2021. I understand that he doesn't believe any community should have the ability to cancel comics or entertainers based on their jokes, and that everyone should be able to be made fun of and all that. And I generally agree, for the most part. But there are circumstances and shit, man. It's not like all cancel culture is bad. Canceling someone just means choosing not to support them. And this is why I have a hard time saying I'm against cancel culture. I'm just against the messaging. The branding is awful. For every good thing, there are shitty piggybackers. And there are a million examples, and some that I could throw out that are extremely controversial, so I won't.
I will say,
for every good thing, there are members of our listenership who are bad people. That's not it's like there's no group that doesn't have what is that called?
Immunity
to that. Yeah, it's everybody.
I will say the take that you said that resonated with me the most is that Dave Chappelle has a platform right now when he knows, oh, here's Dave Chappelle's Netflix special. Here's millions and millions of people from both sides of the spectrum of politically, because Dave Chappelle appeals to everybody because he's just funny. And he could make some great changes that like society would benefit from.
And he has.
Yeah. And he could do it again.
But that's what I'm saying. Now he's picking this, and it's just like, look, the cancel culture thing, we have to cancel the fuck out of some people like Harvey Weinstein and Kevin Spacey, and the list is really long and depressing, so I'm going to stop there. But it's just, like, it's not just the Me Too movement, by the way. Racist-ass motherfuckers who spread hate, companies who support policies like the abortion restrictions in Texas, fuck these people. They need to be put on blast and exposed. And we as a society need to stop pretending that as a part of cancel culture, there isn't also the possibility at redemption. Like, dude, DaBaby can just apologize like a normal person, explain why he's such an ignorant doofus when it comes to this stuff, for which he has a pretty good fucking reason, and then pledge to be better and grow from it. And guess what? He'll still get shit on by some people. Some will still never come back. But most of us are going to be willing to come around and see this dude just hadn't had a chance to learn yet. There are points, when I was 24, I said and did shit that if you took that and judged me against it now, it would make no sense. People have to be given the opportunity to learn from their mistakes. And that's where cancel culture is incorrect. And certainly in the case of DaBaby, it's like, come on, we're really going to like we're all going to pretend that we're never going to listen to this dude's music again because he went on a homophobic rant. Ever. We still jam Michael Jackson all the time. You know what I mean? It's just like there's so much hypocrisy in our society as a whole that it's a little bit silly to pretend on shit like this that we're so holier than thou. It's silly as hell. And now back to Chappelle. I am not trying to compare Dave Chappelle to one of these people or evil corporations that the aforementioned ones. Like I genuinely believe he is an amazing person, like a good person, has a good heart. He's flawed like all of us, obviously, but I think he's a good person. And I believe Dave is simply the victim of a few things here. There's some reasons he's off base. And these are my thoughts before I get to my conclusion, which is coming. Okay? So just like keep that in mind. Obviously, he's gone through his own personal struggles in life and continues to go through his own personal struggles in life. And in particular, as it relates to race, I think that puts him in a difficult position to judge this entire situation. Because black people in America obviously have an entire movement of their own to deal with and have for hundreds of years. I get that. And I think a piece of it for him is that it's upsetting to see it, as he even admits in this newest special, how well they're doing, how much progress they've made. He jokes, right? And I think that's a piece of it. I think that's part one. Then he's been incredibly famous and successful for multiple decades. One of the penalties you pay for that is a disconnect from the real people.
Because you have these jokes that killed 30 years ago that you could just whip out and have the entire place laughing, and now all you get is, oh.
And it's just, it's one of those things where you can either, it's like you either die as a hero or live long enough to see yourself become the villain. And I'm hesitant to say that's what's happening here with Dave, but God, he's really put us up against it in terms of judging him. So
I want to, before you get to the next point,
yeah,
I want to know how you remedy your thoughts about Dave with the story that he told about his transgender friend.
Oh, Jared, I have a lot more points here.
Because
a lot more coming.
I feel like there was a lot of complexity.
I'm going to need you to reserve your questions till the end of the class, son.
Okay.
Okay?
You have the structure.
Yeah, I'm going to get to that. My third point was that he's aging into a fucking boomer. He's old. That is unavoidable. You cannot avoid that, all right? I've learned that. I'm watching it happen to some of my friends, and I'm only 34 years old. By the time you're 50, bro, you don't have a fucking clue what the hell 18-year-olds are doing, and you're never going to understand it, and there's nothing you can do about it. It's not a thing that you avoid. It's like death and taxes. The shit is coming for you eventually, and Chappelle has not handled it well. He's not willing to admit it. That he doesn't fucking know, which I'll get to more in a second too. But all those things make it super difficult for him to understand where the LGBTQ plus community is coming from. And I get that. And I get that maybe one day, 20 years from now, I'll be disconnected and old and rich and not know what the fuck I'm talking about anymore. But damn, I hope I don't obsess over joking about some shit that frankly doesn't even concern me and makes me look like an unempathetic boob, which it really pissed me off when he argued for empathy. Like, dude, empathy would be for you to move the hell on. This is boomer behavior. And look, I will freely admit again, right here, there are elements of the trans community that I don't understand, that I personally need to learn more about, and I don't know any trans people that I'm aware of, so I don't have a lot of exposure to the culture, and it's something I hope to change at some point. As such, I don't plan on making a whole bunch of jokes about trans people on this show. I know gay people, I know black and white and Mexican and Asian people, so I know what jokes I can make at the expense of those communities and my own. But I don't know with the trans community, so I simply don't do it. It's not a piece of where I can go as a comedian or whatever. And with Dave, like, he brings up some of these stories in an effort to erase that piece of the argument, and it ends up going sort of the opposite way for me, where I'm like, it felt a little like Donald Trump saying, the blacks love me. Like, do they? All of them? Like, if I had one black friend and he or she died, and then one day when I was accused of racism, I used their death story as the example to show how not racist I am, the whole thing was just weird, man. Like, dude, Dave, we get it. You're uncomfortable with people changing their sexual identity or finding their sexual identity and acting on it or fighting for their identity and what they see as mislabeling in popular culture. And that's fine. Be a boomer. You're old. And you've given way more than most to the culture at this point. But like, my man, you are wrong here. Like, basically the trans community is saying, hey, you kind of hurt our feelings. And you're saying, literally, quote, suck my dick, end quote. Which is like, it's pretty childish.
Did he actually say suck my dick?
I mean, he says it in the special, not directly to them.
You also did tell Bryan Cranston to suck your dick.
And I will continue to. Bryan Cranston is it happened to him too. It happens to all of our legends. Bryan Cranston's another one.
But it's about a much less divisive thing. It's about the Houston Astros.
Well, it's about baseball as a whole to me, Jared.
Okay.
It's about baseball as a whole to me. It's just Dave's thing feels childish, and people's feelings do matter. And I hurt people's feelings all the time. I can be a real prick. Like, I am low-key a Steve Jobs fucking psycho hothead creative lunatic the last several months because of my meds. And I own that. Like, I apologize. I tell people I'm sorry and thank them for putting up with me. And I try to be better. And I've said shit before. I used to use the F word that is offensive to gay people with great regularity in high school. Probably unknowingly to gay people in some cases, which breaks my heart. My aunt is gay, and I'm not using that the way Dave does. I'm using it to admit how fucking naive and ignorant I was to the power of words that make groups of people feel about themselves negatively or hated or downcast. So I don't use that word anymore. And I'm not saying this like Matt Damon. Where I think he was like, 2 weeks ago I used the F word and my son told me that was bad. And I was like, you're right, son. Or whatever his weird fucking story was. I'm talking about when I was 14 years old.
Matt Damon's also evil.
And I'm 34 years old now, to be clear. This was 20 years ago. It's like if you tried to bring up my DWI from college. I don't even drive anymore. Not for the same reason. I also don't drink anymore. Talk about that later. But like, I don't say things anymore after I learn that they're hurtful. And I apologize profusely for saying things that I have said that were hurtful when I was young and stupid and naive and scared. And I don't understand why Dave can't just do something like that with this. Like, why can't he say, I'm sorry, I didn't consider your perspective fully and I went too far. We should be able to make fun of everyone and joke together about everything. But not when those jokes are made out of malice or a place of like real misunderstanding or even hate. I love Dave's jokes about white people because they're largely true. And I also know he doesn't hate white people collectively. Probably a lot of us though, and that's fair. But you get my point. If the trans community feels his jokes aren't made with the right intentions or isn't seeing what he so vehemently argues are good intentions, then he needs to own that. Because I don't think Dave hates anyone. I believe him. I also think he thinks he's so smart that he can't be wrong and won't own a mistake. And that's a problem. A lot of people get to that point when they achieve like Dave has and level up like Dave has. He knows more than most of us can ever hope to. But that dude is flat out wrong with this shit, and he needs to move on so we can all get back to laughing at actual stand-up. This was the first of the 4 specials that was even stand-up, that I believe he wrote and rehearsed in full. The rest of that was freestyled and weird. It was like cigarette slam poetry. This was the first one where I felt like he was legitimately, like this was rehearsed. Like he went front to back, that was all planned. The rest of them, I feel like he was freestyling, going off the dome, doing a lot of weird shit, audience interaction, blah, blah, blah. And I just would like to see him get back to talking about something else. I mean, and I think that's where we're all at collectively, everybody, just at this point. Like, I don't think there's anything else to be had from this conversation about Dave and the LGBTQ plus community. Here was one of my tweets. I pray David wins his holy war against corporate interest, trying to keep him from checks notes, making fun of queer people. Mr. Chappelle was recently compensated a mere $24 million by Netflix to make the same jokes for a 4th time, and is clearly a victim of the LGBTQPIAA+. He's making an absolute fucking fortune on this controversy, and making money on being controversial at the expense of other people's feelings is not all that tight.
It's like a very big industry, though, nowadays.
And ironically, he's the guy that walked away from $50 million because he thought the humor of Chappelle's show was enabling racists and corporate interests more than it was contributing to the culture, and that made him a hero forever. But now he's on the other end, taking $24 million checks to take on the trans community?
I still don't exactly understand why he turned down the Comedy Central deal.
That was it in a nutshell.
But like, what exactly was he referring? I never watched it in its run, so I didn't know what like culturally was going on.
When you've got a bunch of 12-year-olds running around, seeing you on the street and yelling out jokes that have the N-word in them, and I'm Rick James, bitch, and all this different shit, like there were a lot of those jokes that I was on this. I was on the wrong side of this for sure as a kid. A lot of those jokes now when I hear them, because I've learned more, thankfully, and been in a position to become less ignorant. They mean different things than I thought they did, and they definitely are just different for the black community, and in some cases are not for white people. And I didn't really know that. And so it was that on top of, I think, Comedy Central being like, we're giving you $50 million to keep doing that. Mm-hmm. And sort of enabling what he saw as a negative influence on our culture racially, which I don't think is what he ended. Like, obviously, again, I give him huge props for everything he's done in his career up until these 4 specials with Netflix, because I just don't. Look, he's so fucking good that maybe it is 10 years from now I look back and we all understand, like, oh, he was actually bringing us closer together somehow. I don't fucking know. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like with Kanye and his shoes. Like, sometimes I see a pair and I'm like, yeah, that's what moron would pay $200 for those. And 6 months later, they're on my feet.
And they cost $800.
And I'm like, what is happening? Fuck! So I'm not saying Dave is even, look, everybody's right is a new thing I'm learning too. To themselves, they're right.
To thine own self be true.
Sure. And I mean, you've got to respect everybody's opinion and perspective. I just already knew this perspective and opinion, and I felt like I'd seen this show before. It's like, don't be one of those dudes who uses outrage culture to make money. That is so below you, bro. That's what this feels like. Like he knew, or like he is, it's like he knows this country is fucked, and it's not really his problem anymore, so he wants to get as much money for his kids and shit as he can because he sees that as a way to make a real difference, so he's positioning himself with Joe Rogan. Like, Joe Rogan is where he's positioned himself now. Wherever that is, like the right of center or whatever. I don't even know what that space is called.
It's called the elk harvesting plant.
But something like that, so he can make as much money as possible. But it's like right now, that's at the expense of trans people? And it's just like, why? Just go back to shredding white people and white women. He did some white women jokes. He said all white women age terribly. I bet you they're pretty upset. And I bet you the whole fucking next special is not just about white women aging terribly. You know what I mean? That's what's weird about this. If he always knew that this was part of the game and he was going to get the outrage, then why is every other fucking special about the same topic? Move on, sir. Move on with your life. You're stuck with your boomer-ass views on sexuality, and that's fine. Like you said in the closer, you're not going to talk about it anymore. Okay, great. No mas, please. But you did not win what I think you see as some kind of war against PC culture. You just looked a little out of touch and annoyed a lot of your existing fans while picking up a bunch of toxic, weird fans that love Crystalia and worship Joe Rogan and Elon Musk and listen to Limp Bizkit. Congratulations. That's how I feel, Jared.
Nothing wrong with Limp Bizkit, though, in spurts.
I did it all for the nookie.
Yeah. What's the other one? Give me something to break.
What are your, yeah, that's the right pitch. What are your, what were your thoughts? You watched the special before me.
So I was expecting it to be, I probably shouldn't have expected this because I know Dave's not that kind of comic, but I thought it was going to be more like outwardly offensive to everybody. Whereas I think watching it, it's more so outwardly offensive to trans people. Does that make sense? As somebody who's not trans, when I watch it, I'm not like, wow, that's so offensive. But I think there's a lot of subtlety and nuance to how offensive it is to that community that I can't really pick up on.
Which again, because like it's, and I think that's almost like after special one, I was like, okay, he kind of gets it. But after the fourth one, I'm like, okay, why is he still harping on like, they are allowed to ask us to not use certain words, for sure. Like, that's how all of this works, bro. What? What? That's just part of it now. The better we get, that's more part of it. So, I don't know.
Yeah.
So I was like, what? So I just didn't get his point. Like, we can disrespect everybody. It's like, yeah, we can't. I could be a racist dickhead and use the N-word. I'm not going to do that.
What I also didn't get is like, Davis is the guy who would make fun of somebody for saying, and he would do it in his white person voice. He'd be like, oh, but I have a black friend. I can make this joke. He would do that voice, but he'd be like, oh, but I have a trans friend. I can make that joke. But then he was that guy who has a trans friend, so says he can make trans jokes because he would make fun of somebody else doing that, but then he did it.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. None of the message I think he thinks he delivered actually rung true. Unless you're already in the camp of people who worships Joe Rogan, Elon Musk, and Crystalia.
Yeah.
Collectively, it has to be all three boxes checked, not just one of them. If you're a fan of one of them,
you can be a fan of Joe Rogan
and be fine.
And you can be a fan of Limp Bizkit
and be fine.
Like Limp Bizkit golf ball whacker guy.
You can be a fan of Elon Musk and be fine, probably. But I think we're getting to the point where it's like, come on, acknowledge this guy's a nut.
Fan versus stan is important.
Standing Elon is, I think they're the same thing. Can you just be a fan of Elon Musk and not stan him, right?
I'm a fan of him when what he does benefits me personally. I don't stan the man.
I'm not even a fan of what he does when it benefits me personally anymore. I'm just like,
you have a Tesla.
I know. And I own stock. Which shot 30% the last 3 days. It's not good, Jared.
So if you're on a Patreon,
douchebag stocks, I told you.
If you're on Patreon, then you would know that Ross, as a protest against Elon Musk, has agreed to give me his Tesla.
Yes, that's one thing Jared's claimed on Patreon. Anyway, I love Dave Chappelle. It's just and I don't feel like I'm in some place of extreme LGBTQ plus veteran fucking leadership to talk to him about what he should or shouldn't talk about. But as a fan of comedy and as a fan of his and as a fan of humans and equal rights for all, watching the four of these, I stand by everything I just said. It doesn't make sense anymore. It doesn't compute unless he's literally doing this on purpose to align himself with what is a very, very big and financially beneficial wave, because as you've seen, it's that sort of alt culture thing, whatever that is. It's a very mainstream alt culture is worth a lot of money. Joe Rogan signed however many hundreds of millions of dollar deal with Spotify. So It doesn't make sense for that to be the move, though, because he's the guy who walked away from the $50 million from fucking... But he's older now, so I don't know. And the world is shit in the pandemic, and I just don't know. I just don't know. So I'm going to have to wait 20 years to see, maybe. I hope I look at this from a different angle one day and see that Dave was trying to show us all something. But right now, it feels like he's just being an asshole. That's all I have to say about that. Today's episode is brought to you by Birddogs, making the most comfortable shorts in the world with the built-in underwear you know and love for living life and making love. Why wear shorts with underwear when you can wear even better shorts with underwear built in, thus creating less laundry, thus saving the planet, thus making you a hero who is even better looking and more comfortable? Birddogs, baby. But did you know they make pants as well? And they have joggers that are in stock on birddogs.com. They're brand new joggers. Jared and I have ours now. We love them. They're amazing. And what's more, Jared, do you remember when you were a little kid and you'd go to a fast food restaurant and you'd get a toy with your meal? Look at the football I hold in the palm of my hand. I will throw it to you. You can hold it and feel it and touch it.
Wow.
Jared, look at it. Tell the audience just how pristine it is.
It's very pristine, and it reminds me of those Nerf vortexes.
From when you were a kid, right? It's a whistling football, whistle-tipped football. You get one of these with every order on birddogs.com when you use the code RBP at checkout.
I'm
when
shaking
you get the
it.
most comfortable shorts or pants in the world with built-in underwear right now.
I'm shaking it, trying to get it to whistle.
The football?
Yeah, please do not go to YouTube, look at this video, and then Photoshop.
It looks like you're jacking. Yeah, Photoshop the football out of it, and then it's just you masturbating the air. Don't do that. Birddogs.com, code RBP, free whistling football. It's like a Nerf, but it says Birddogs on the side. It's beautiful. Throw it back to me. I want my back. Thank you, sir. And you have to be more than 2 feet away from each other for it to whistle. If you're wondering why you're not hearing the whistle, here I'll demonstrate one for you though. That's what a whistle sounds like if you were unfamiliar. You're going to get that every time you throw it long range. If you buy one of these at birddogs.com using the code RBP with your order, you will receive one of these in the mail. Go now. Do it. Wednesday marked 4 years since I completely cut consuming alcohol as an activity out of my life. And the first question a lot of people ask is why? Why'd you quit drinking? I quit drinking because it was no longer serving me. Alcohol had been a massive detriment to my mental health. Ironically, since the day I turned 21 years old and had my first panic attack, I have had hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds since, the strong majority of which were when I was hungover after a night of drinking. And I was 30 years old when I quit, so that's almost a full decade of pretty needless suffering added to my life. So when people ask why I quit, it was time. I was about to lose my marriage, and that threat was pretty heavily tied to me needing to quit alcohol, basically almost forced upon me. And I'm thankful for that forever, if nothing else. But she wasn't why I quit. I was sick of not liking myself. I didn't want to wake up in the morning ashamed of who I had been the night before. Not necessarily because I acted an ass in front of a bunch of people or anything. In my case, usually because I had been too drunk to see what was happening in my life and have any chance of repairing it. It was becoming unmanageable, as they would put it in Alcoholics Anonymous. If your life is unmanageable, you are an alcoholic. If it's unmanageable as a result of alcohol, you are an alcoholic by definition. Whether you like the definition or not, I don't even really consider myself to be an alcoholic. That's one of the strange things about it. I was never addicted to alcohol, therefore I don't like the definition to be applied to me. But it is what it is. I was also really out of shape. I'd gotten really out of shape, and my job was fucking miserable. The company that Jared and I were at was falling apart. Not because I was drinking. It was just falling apart. My life sucked, and alcohol was making it worse, not better, is the main answer, right? It was an easy decision from that front. And I wasn't really drinking every day because I wasn't able to do shit the next day hungover. So it was usually Thursday night, Friday night, Saturday night, and I never drank all day. Rarely day drank. I think a lot of people think, to be an alcoholic or to have a problem with drinking, you got to drink all day or get addicted to it. And it's no. It was just, that was the first thing I had to cut out at 21 when I had my first panic attack was day drinking, as an example. I couldn't day drink anymore. So I hadn't done that in a really long time. I didn't quit drinking until I was 30, bro. So for mental health, for panic disorder, for what I have with now, unfortunately, sort of as a result of drinking and having so many panic attacks behind the wheel and in the car and on the highway, I have like I have PTSD and have to treat that, which alcohol also would not be beneficial for. So I just don't drink, man. And I weighed 206 pounds at my height, which on my frame, like 180 on my frame, because I'm a little skinny bony man, is a noticeable amount of chubby.
I'm the bony man.
If I'm 180, you are the bony man. So yeah, at 206, I looked Bill Chungus, bro. That was not, people see Bill Chungus and they think that must have been 250 minimum. Bro, that's a 206 pound me. That's only 206, dude.
Is that what you got up to max?
That was my max. So I lost, wait, no, I don't know if that was the max.
What are you at now?
160, 150, I go between there just to pick, because I'm coming off this medication. It fucks up my appetite, so I have to have a lot of smoothies. I'm stupid. I'm too skinny right now, probably. But point is, that was one of the reasons. I just from a, honest to God, the first year after I quit drinking, I did not work out very much, and I lost 20 pounds. But I lost the first 10 in maybe 3 weeks. It was nuts.
Something I've always wondered, so you say you deciding to be sober was it was a long process of you slowly realizing you needed to stop it, and then you just went cold turkey. What was it about that last time you got drunk and were hungover that made you go, that's the straw that broke the camel's back, now I'm no longer ever having a sip of alcohol ever again?
Yeah, that was the part that was kind of forced upon me was related to my marriage. And it was like, I knew from I remember a moment in college, there was this party, we had a day party, and I couldn't drink, and I was really hungover from the night before, and I was having to take Xanax, and I had to call my mom because I was having a panic attack, and it was a crawfish boil. It was one of these parties I look forward to every year. I remember at that point, so I was under 23, realizing that I needed to quit, that I couldn't drink anymore, that it wasn't going to work if I continued to have panic attacks. And if I continued to have this issue with my mental health. At that point, I just didn't know enough, and I wasn't educated enough on my mental health and what I was dealing with and how trauma works or any of that stuff. I just didn't know. And it's like one of those things you kind of have to look back on like, well, fuck. I wish I'd had a better understanding for this, but that's not how life works. So it wasn't that there was this particular night, but it was sort of a circumstance with my relationship that led to like, well, I might as well now. You know what I mean? I was like, yeah, it's a pretty good opportunity. Fuck it. That was a good reason. I was like, I can try to save my marriage by doing this, right? That was my initial way to convince myself to finally it was worth it, right? Like I could let go. So beyond that, it wasn't hard. For me, from a physical withdrawal standpoint, let me put it that way. I didn't like crave alcohol or like go to a dinner and see somebody drinking and like, fuck, man, I really want to drink. Like that didn't really happen for me, but I was also going to AA meetings for the first 3 months. Like I went a few times a week at least for the first couple months to AA meetings.
Earlier this podcast, I said, to thine own self be true, and I didn't realize how good of a combination that was with the two things we were talking about.
Yeah.
So that's the AA motto, right?
It's one of them. I don't know, they have a whole bunch of things they say. Lots of things they say.
Stop drinking. That's one of them,
That's
right?
definitely one of them. That's step 6 on the 12-step program. No, I'm kidding. I believe it's step 1. Or one of the, I don't know. I guess you have to do that before you can get to the steps. Hold on. Let me get back to what I was saying. So when I was a kid and I got put on probation, one of the things I was required to do at some point in the 3.5 years I was on probation was go to a couple AA meetings or something. So I knew how they worked, kind of, and I fucking hated them. I thought it was the dumbest shit in the whole world. Couldn't understand how that could possibly work for anybody. I had to go to some NA or some other kind of meeting. It wasn't AA, but it was like outpatient rehab for a while too. And it's a similar structure where I just didn't like that. Like, you didn't have to believe in God. You could do anything as your higher power. That confused me as a kid. Now I love that element of it. I think it's probably the coolest thing about it is that it's not religiously restrictive. Anybody can be in AA because there is no need to believe in God. There's no need to believe in fuck all. You can go in there and believe in nothing. But if you have to be willing to have some kind of higher power, so you have to create something, something in your own mind, I guess, if you believe in nothing, if you're a nihilist, Lebowski. But ironically, I hated AA, and it ended up being one of the things that really saved, I don't know if it saved my life, but it saved me from a whole lot more struggle and pain and suffering because it showed me what it could look like if I wasn't willing to let go. And I didn't want that. And man, I have so much respect for people who are in AA because here's the element of it that people don't understand. It's just a community. It's a support community. And these people are all struggling with something that is the same. And in an effort, a group effort, they try to keep each other accountable and teach each other strategies and methods to live a happy, successful life. It's beautiful. More things like it should exist, and they don't. Well, some do. There's an NA, and there's all kind of A's at this point, anonymous is.
Wait,
but
the NRA?
not that one. I don't have anything to say about that right now. Let's tackle 2 controversial things in one day, Jared, not 3. So yeah, AA was a huge part of my ability to let go immediately and to not struggle with that initial few months, that first few months. So for anybody that asks me, how did you do it? I say, I went to meetings is one thing. Go to a meeting. And I think I'm a special circumstance when it came to alcohol and my need to get it out of my life. It was different than the reason a lot of people have to get it out. It's because they really do have a physical dependency on it. And that's really difficult to get rid of by yourself. And as somebody who's going through a physical dependency weaning off process right now, and as somebody who's been definitely addicted to shit before, like nicotine and tobacco, I know how hard that is. And I know how fucking difficult it is to do alone. You can't. I don't think you can. So don't be afraid to ask for help, and don't be afraid to go and find a community that can help you achieve what you want to achieve. Because since this, man, my weight loss, sleep has been a million times better. Like, I lost 60 pounds. I've saved a shit ton of money, even with how much I blow down. Weed, to be clear, that sounded like a cokehead thing to say. Which I do not fox with on any level at all, fucking ever. Just if anybody was curious. Don't know why you would be, weirdo. I feel better. Hangovers suck. I do not miss hangovers. And also, like, I hold absolutely nothing against people who booze. Just like I don't hold anything against people who don't smoke weed or who do whatever the fuck it is you need to do to get through this life. As long as you do it responsibly, healthily, and don't hurt anybody else in the process, that's the kind of person I am, man. I'm just a libertarian out here, you know?
What about those kids we talked about in Denmark who are putting nicotine pouches in their foreskin?
They should stop that. That's terrible, and they need to be stopped. They need to be stopped like Tucker Carlson needs to be stopped. I also want to say one thing, because a lot of people assume this. My life has not gotten easier since I quit drinking. And I don't think that's necessarily normal either. My circumstances and my challenges have been my own for my reasons, right? So, like, I don't want people to look at me with the wrong perception. I feel like that happens sometimes, like, oh, this dude quit drinking and lost all this weight, and his wife's gone, and he's living the dream. It's like, no, bro, I fucking fight hard week in and week out right now, and it's not related to alcohol, but just like in general, for anybody who struggles with their mental health or with addiction, substance abuse, like, I understand you, and I know what it's like to be one of you, because I am. And if you ever have questions for me, like Jared had some today, and if you have any more, Jared, I'll give you a moment. Holler at me at WR Bolen on Twitter. Instagram is same at WR Bolen at WRBOLEN. You can email me, Ross at bolenmedia.com if you have questions. I try to get back to as many people as I can. So yeah, don't hate on me if I don't get back to you. It's a lot. I got a lot going on, but I try to get back to as many people as I can. And yeah. Bone Man, any other questions from you?
So you mentioned that you did not have a physical dependency on alcohol like many people in AA do. So the kind of what I hear is, like, the reason why a lot of people, once they're sober, they say they can never have another drop is because they think that right when they have that first drop, that dependency they think will kind of kick back in and they won't be able to stop. Somebody like you who never had the dependency, what would happen if you had one beer, do you think?
So that's one of those things I still ask myself. And there was honestly a point after the divorce where I was like, should I try drinking again? Like, maybe I was only really not good at drinking because I was so miserable in my marriage. Like, maybe I could make this work for me now. And the decision I ended up making was like, no. And the only reason I was smart enough to make that decision was AA. Because what they'll tell you is, and what you see is, and what you hear and watch it come out of fucking living human breathing mouths who've experienced it, is that it's the same every time. It doesn't matter for somebody that struggles with it like I do, or for somebody that has a mental health issue as a result of it like I do. It doesn't matter if I, like, we could go out right now and have margaritas maybe, let's say, and get drunk and have a good night, and like I could wake up tomorrow and maybe it wouldn't be that bad the first night. But eventually the end game's always the same. And it would always end with me being fat and miserable, again, completely out of control of my mental health and probably destroying my relationships and friendships and stuff like that. So it's like for a person that struggles with substance abuse, particularly alcohol or any hard drugs, like that's the thing you kind of have to accept is that, yeah, you could go back and you might be having fun for a while, but eventually it all falls apart again. There'll be people in AA. It's amazing, bro. There'll be people in there who are like, I've been in the program for 30 years. I've relapsed 18 times, and I'm actually only 8 months sober right now. And you're just like, what? And there'll be other people in there who explain it to you. I've been sober 36 years or whatever. I actually have been in the program for 45. I relapsed at one point. And it's like, damn. And then they found the fucking secret or something. It's just crazy. Like, everybody has a different story. It teaches you that everybody in life has their different struggles in their own different ways, and that none of us are unique in that suffering. It's just what we choose to do about it once it's upon us.
What I think is interesting about AA is, like you said, and I actually would like to hear more about this. So in AA, it's not alcohol is bad. Is it alcohol is bad for you?
Yes, for you.
Okay.
Specifically for you.
Okay. That's
not alcohol is bad.
Yeah.
It's you need to accept that alcohol is bad for you. That you genetically you have a predisposition that says you cannot drink alcohol. Because that is the case. In my case, it's not because I'm addicted to it, but it's because that with my genetic predisposition, alcohol causes me to be in an unstable, unmanageable place with my mental health. So for a lot of other people, it's that they can't keep up with their bills. They spend too much on it. Or they can't stop drinking at work. Now they can't keep up their jobs, so they can't keep a job, stuff like that. If your life becomes unmanageable, then then you fall into the category of people who need to be in AA, according to them, that alcohol is bad for, but not alcohol in general is bad. And I think that's one of the things that's always been so crazy to me about like making weed illegal. It's like, okay, come on. Now that's like, because that is the argument. Just weed in general is bad. Well, of course, weed is still going to be bad for some people. I hope we all acknowledge that, right? Not everybody's going to use weed responsibly after it's legalized. We know that, right? There are going to be people who have issues in their lives because of it. It's a fucking drug. There's 1 billion products available that are like that in America. Personal responsibility is a thing. There's also a disease called alcoholism that kills people if they don't treat it. And as far as I am aware, having read and studied and been to meetings and known a lot of people who deal with it, AA is the best way to go if you're trying to find a place to start at the very least. And a big part of AA, Jared, just to finish explaining it, is you get a sponsor. And I never did that, for example.
Wait, like Birddogs or?
No, it'd be like if it was like if you were and me were in AA together, and I was like, Jared, will you be my sponsor because you're 6 years sober and I'm just starting. And then I would do the program with you, teach you how to do the 12 steps or whatever, be like your mentor.
To be clear, I'm not sober.
No, Jared's a drunken buffoon.
It's funny. In college certainly I never drank. I actually never really like blacked out. I've browned out many times, but I've never like, there's an hour where I don't remember anything.
You explain the difference for people who might not be aware?
So in my definition, a blackout is at one point your memory cuts out for an extended period of time.
Excuse me.
During which you do not have any recollection of what happened.
Right.
I would have times where like I would leave the bar, go to the next bar. Somebody would be like, yo, I ran into you in between bars. And I'd be like, I do not remember running into you.
That's a brownout?
To me, that's a brownout because I remember being in either bar. I just didn't remember the thing in between.
What does it mean if I brown out every day and I don't drink? What's that called? Green out?
Yeah. It's a green out. But yeah, I mean, it's...
I'm just kidding. I don't green out every day. That it's more of, again, I guess that's a weird joke. Like, again, because of the side effects of my medication, what was already not a great place with my short-term mental or memory is now much worse. And as such, I never remember anything.
I always thought it was interesting that being sober, people know you're referring to alcohol of all of the drugs that there are, you know?
That's the thing. AA, one of the reasons I didn't stick with it, honestly, is because they don't consider you sober in some of them. And some, depending on which AA you're a part of, which place. if you smoke weed. You're Cali sober or whatever. And I was like, fuck this.
Cali sober.
Nobody's calling me that and got the fuck out of there,
fuck
Jared.
California.
That's exactly right. Anyway, if you have more questions for me, I'm more than happy to answer them. I try to get to as many people as I can. Again, like I said, ross@bolenmedia.com is my email, @WRBolen on Twitter and Instagram. And I really appreciate all y'all. 4 years was cool. It's cool. I need to go to a meeting at some point soon and get a 4-year chip or whatever, just because I like the chip, frankly. And then at some point, when I'm not so busy trying to build Bolen Media, it's one of those areas where I do want to get involved in substance abuse recovery. I've seen, like AA, for example, is self-led. There's no overarching organization or some shit. I could go in and say, can I lead next meeting? And if it was available, I could lead next meeting. And I'm going to do stuff like that at some point. I'm looking forward to it. But for now, if you want to learn more about my personal journey, everybody's is different. I will also say that. You can't quitting cold turkey and only going to AA a few times a week for 3 months isn't the journey that everybody has at all. That's not it. And I struggle in a lot of other areas of my life. And you should never judge yourself for your own struggles. That's the last thing I'll say. Everybody struggles with something. If you struggle with alcohol or any substance and you're ashamed of it and you're not willing to get help because you're ashamed of it, everybody in the world hits a point in their life where they need help. It's not possible to avoid. It happens to everyone. If you ask old people this, it's one of the things they will tell you. You should have been calling your grandparents and you'd know this. So do not be afraid to ask for help because you are not alone. Today's episode of RBP is also brought to you by The Daily Tip. The Daily Tip. I've been betting on sports for a long time, Jared. I've got into it at the ripe legal age of 18. The ripe adult age of 18, I guess, is what I should say. But yeah, this is an incredible podcast. If you're into sports betting, you know how quickly the lines can change. So you listen to these guys. When you've got a lot riding on the odds, it pays to stay ahead of the curve. And their hosts, Michael Jenkins and Chelsea Messenger, bring you early morning hot takes and analysis. So before placing your bets this weekend and every weekend, listen to The Daily Tip presented by BetMGM for the best betting analysis and information. Again, the show is called The Daily Tip. It's highly entertaining. Michael and Miss Messenger are incredible. And if you're into sports betting and you love podcasts, which a lot of you here do,
I would assume.
Go listen to The Daily Tip today, presented by BetMGM, for the best betting analysis and information anywhere. On the way out, I wanted to say, Jared referenced it earlier, but Bryan Cranston.
Noted. What I will say, if you said, Jared, give me a list of 5 of the most beloved American actors, I would have put Bryan Cranston on this list.
And I would have too, and that's what pains me so much about this situation, because we found ourselves opposite each other in this argument, me and Mr. Cranston. And essentially, the long story short of it is, if you want to hear the whole thing, you can go to listen to the episode of Banging the Can, where I almost titled it "Fuck Bryan Cranston," but then I was scared it wouldn't get put on the podcast platforms. Bryan Cranston made a very aggressive statement against the Houston Astros organization.
Not as aggressive as your response to it, but certainly.
I don't know. I would argue his attack was more aggressive than my defense.
I don't think you said anything about sucking anybody's dick.
Well, look, I tell everybody that. It's not exclusive to Mr. Cranston. Anyway, he made a very egregious statement about the Houston Astros that I had to respond to, and it's a weird spot because, like, it's one of those things, like, they say never meet your heroes, because a lot of the time you end up not liking them or you disagree about something really important that makes you not able to get along. Well, I've never met Bryan Cranston, but now I know damn sure if I did, how could we possibly look at me. How could we possibly get along now? I do a Houston sports podcast. I love the Astros. I argue aggressively, constantly, that everyone in baseball is a fucking cheater and that this is ridiculous to try to pin them as an organization as the evil bad guys. But I love Bryan Cranston. He is one of the most likable actors in Hollywood. I think he's a really good guy. Why the fuck is he doing this? It's like that dude from that wears the Rob Lowe. Why did Rob Lowe have to put on the NFL hat? The shield? I loved you, Rob Lowe, you fucking weirdo.
And he put on the shield.
The Shield? And like, Cranston is a Dodgers fan. That's the thing people don't understand about this. The Dodgers suck. All right? Nobody likes the Dodgers except Dodgers fans.
They spent $270 million on their roster?
They're embarrassing, dude. All right? The Dodgers are trash. Cranston knows they're trash. He's upset. He's lashing out. But it's hurtful to be a part of the... I don't think that's the point. Dude, there's millions and millions of us, bro. We love Breaking Bad too, and you just hurt our feelings. I want you to say sorry.
Or else? What can he do?
We'll cancel your ass.
Oh, no, what can he do?
We'll do what they're doing to Dave right now, whatever that is. Where he says he can't get a production studio or not a big movie executive to touch his new documentary. It's about comedians making it through the pandemic, I think, is what it is. It also just seems like a weird thing to bring up. Like, compared to...
Yeah.
You know, if somebody brought that up in comparison to the civil rights movement, it'd be pretty fucking upsetting. I don't know. There's a lot to unpack there. What a complicated world we live in, Jared. You realize this?
You hear about this?
Seen this? Have you heard about this?
Yeah,
How
that's
complicated
why
society is?
when the world feels kind of complex, I go and listen to the first ever episode of the Formula Bone F1 show, available wherever you get your podcasts.
Where's the please hit the button?
Back to you, Jared. I hit it.
Oh, good. Yeah. Good stuff. Good stuff. Yeah. Yeah, that's it. That's all I have to say for today.
Oh, I actually hit back to you, Jared.
Back to you, Jared. Wow, you didn't even hit the seat. Jared, here's a story to end the show.
Peel the curtain back.
All right. This is weird. Back when we first started the podcast, Micah and I used to do a joke about anchor speakers because we talked about how good they were, how much we enjoyed ours, and how they needed to cut the check. They were probably, before Chipotle, the original cut the check company. It was Anchor Speakers. Okay? And just picked a piece of food out of my teeth and spit it on the ground. Jared snapped. That's not important.
You just hog a loogie on the floor of the studio? What the fuck was
it was
that?
a piece of chicken or something. It was a piece of chicken or something. Anyway, so we used to joke about Anchor speakers a lot. So the other day, Jared walks into the studio and he plugs in this Anchor speaker that he told me he's going to buy a speaker. He didn't say it was an Anchor. And we were going to buy a speaker so that we could hear the sounds coming out of the soundboard. Well, the irony is that he did buy a speaker and it's an Anchor and it doesn't fucking work. He pressed the button just now and we didn't even know what sound y'all just heard. Turns out it wasn't what we thought it was. And it was what? What ended up playing? Back to you, Jared played. So we apologize on behalf of Anchor speakers who never cut the check and should have, and certainly needs to more than ever now. Anchor, what the fuck?
Yeah, for some reason.
Also, Jared, what the fuck? It's been like 2 weeks. Take that thing the hell out of here. I'm taking it with me when I leave. I'm selling it on the black market.
It's like $30.
I'm taking it with me.
So what happens is it works, but it doesn't play the first 3 seconds of the sound.
I've been saying this for 2 weeks. How many seconds of that sound did it play?
None, because it's less than 3 seconds.
Not a good amount. Fucking Anchor, dude. I'm going to hit that thing with a bat. I'm going full Office Space with that when I get home. Taking a baseball bat in the backyard and getting somebody to film me in a suit and tie beating the shit out of it.
Sorry.
Which is also full Goodfellas.
That was a bad purchase of mine. I apologize.
Fuck you, Jared. What is that? 6 patrons? Did you burn on that?
Oh, 3 of the RBP enforcers.
Or 3 enforcers? Go to patreon.com/Ross Bolen podcast now so we can recoup the losses that Jared made with this fucking Anchor speaker. Damn it, Jared. And if Anchor won't cut the check, maybe you will. Support the show and get even more RBP in exchange. We have an ad-free episode comes out once a week in addition to the public episodes of which you are listening to one now. This episode that we are speaking of, the ad-free one, is new material exclusively available on patreon.com/Ross Bolen podcast in exchange for your direct support of the show. With a minimum pledge of just $5 a month, you can pledge whatever you want. If you pledge $10 or more, there's an enforcer tier where you get even more stuff in exchange. And then if you pledge $100 or more, there's an OG tier. But for just $5, you'll get the ad-free episodes every Friday. You'll get a column each month that's an update on everything that's going on at Bolen Media, which you have coming your way in the next couple days if you want to find out the latest from Bolen Media, including the launch of Formula Bone, more details on that. etc.
And you also get access to the entire backlog of all the ad-free episodes from before you subscribed, meaning, oh my God, wow, I just listened to episode 443, I believe this is.
I don't even know.
Of the Ross Bolen podcast. I'm caught up. Hey, guess what? Dillweed.
You're not caught up.
You have like 100 episodes. You have over like 100 hours of
Daddy
shit.
made you a ton of content that you didn't even know about.
Yeah.
It's right there on patreon.com/Ross Bolen podcast. So go today, and it's important that you understand when we ask for y'all to go above and beyond and support us like this, it's because Jared and I are literally a two-man company. We are the two full-time employees who are financially paid our living wages from this entity called Bolen Media, that you are directly supporting by listening and supporting our sponsors here on the show, or by going to patreon.com/Ross Bolen podcast and supporting us there in exchange for even more content. So that's why we bring it up as much as we do. We're trying to grow this thing even further. We've got Contract Cade coming off a contract soon. Got to figure out what to do there. Need to hire and grow this thing even further. Jared and I have already gotten our plates back to a place with our new brands, with Formula Bone and with Banging the Can, where we are going to die soon if we don't do something. So that means being able to hire more people and grow this thing even bigger. So if you've never supported on Patreon, and maybe that's the extra push you need to get over the edge and come with us, then go to patreon.com/Ross Bolen podcast today and join the RBP gang officially with a minimum pledge of $5 a month in exchange for all kinds of good stuff on patreon.com/Ross Bolen podcast. Thank you for your time. What a week. The Astros are in the World Series. Many of you hate me for that, and I'm sorry. Look, I created a whole nother brand just to avoid annoying the rest of you with Astros takes, and I think everybody should be thanking me and going and rating and reviewing Banging the Can and Formula Bone on Apple Podcasts.
I'm going to do a please clap for you not bothering people. You're not going to be able to hear it.
Okay.
But I'll let you know when to clap. Okay, ready?
Okay, ready?
Please clap.
Okay, clap.
You're
we
welcome.
need a new speaker.
You're all welcome. Yeah, I'm taking that. It wasn't a joke. I'm taking that with me the second I walk away from this microphone. I love you all. Peace be with you. Have a great weekend. Enjoy the outdoor weather if you're in somewhere where it's nice like it is here now, or the sports or the show that you're seeing or watching, or your pets. Your kids. What do people do? Painting, art stuff for the culture's arts. Play harmonica.
Are you done?
I'm done. We can go now. Thank you all, and good night.